And then you just know that the difference between them is that one has a cartilage precursor and the other one doesn't have. So the simpler one would of course be the one without the cartilage precursor. And then, if you see the intramembranous, since there's no cartilage precursor, you would proceed, the mesenchymal cells will differentiate straight to osteoblast. While for the endochondral, since you still have to go pass through the cartilage model, the chondroblast, the mesenchymal cells will differentiate into the chondroblast. So that's basically the main concept behind it. So let's discuss first intramembranous ossification. So what happens at around 8 weeks age of gestation? So we mentioned as mesenchymal cells would migrate and aggregate into the areas destined to be the sites for the bone. So this is inside the developing fetus. So the mesenchymal cells then will differentiate into osteoprogenitor cells that express CDFA1 transcriptor factor. So most likely that is important. So it's highlighted. So it's for osteoblast differentiation and expression of genes necessary for both intramembranous and endochondral ossification. So it's not only for intramembranous ossification. You'd also encounter this in endochondral. So the presumptive bone site becomes more vascularized, and the aggregated mesenchymal cells become larger and rounded. So later I'll be showing you pictures, especially in the endochondral ossification. So cytologic changes result in osteoblast differentiation. What happens when there's the differentiation? Evident Golgi apparatus area. Osteoprogenitor cells from eosinophilic becomes basophilic appearance in the cytoplasm. So osteoblasts secrete collagen, so mainly type 1, and then sialoproteins, osteocalcin, and other bone matrix bone components are being secreted by the osteoblast. So just remember those. Then osteoblast becomes separated as the matrix produce more collagen. So it's surrounded by the matrix. So because the matrix surrounds it, they become more separated from each other. Then the matrix becomes calcified, and there are interconnecting cytoplasmic processes of the osteocytes contained in the canaliculi. Remember the canaliculi yesterday? So just correlate that picture yesterday with this statement. So here's a picture. So the active osteoblasts produce the uncalcified matrix material. So if you can see, they're somewhat cuboidal, larger. And then the inactive osteoblasts on the left one are actually from the non-growing part of the bones, spicule. So what can you notice? One is cuboidal or rounder sometimes, and the other one is more flattened. Then there's an arrow there. No, first notice the osteocyte, of course, is the one in the middle of the spicule. So those are the cells, the mature cells. So remember, we mentioned that the osteoblasts, and then if you can see here, the osteoblast, active osteoblast would be surrounded by the matrix that it is forming, and then because of this formation of the matrix, they would separate from each other. Compared to this, or they're beside each other. This one, even the inactive ones are somewhat beside each other. So intramembranous ossification, the surrounding mesenchymal cells proliferate into osteoprogenitor cells. The osteoprogenitor cells come into opposition with the formed spicules. Remember the previous picture? They went beside the spicule itself. So this is what we call oppositional growth, and they become osteoblasts. The one we pointed in the picture with the arrow. And then osteoblasts add more matrix, so they later on form trabecular network. So the spicules, so they would just somehow make a connection between themselves and make a trabecular network. And then continued mitotic activity to maintain osteoprogenitor cells as constant source of osteoblasts. Okay. So new osteoblasts lay down bone matrix in successive layers. So this is when we say that we have a woven bone. Okay, so basically that's just a step. And this, the one that we would be producing, we call this the membrane bone or the intramembranous bone. So don't get confused between the terminologies, they're just the same. So if you remember, so you have the mesenchymal, this is the simpler one, so mesenchymal, osteoprogenitor, osteoblast, form the matrix around it, osteocyte. Then when within the spicules, they would just proliferate and then they would enlarge and then some of them will form trabecularly. Basically, that's the main concept of the intramembranous ossification. So this is a picture. So if you can see here, this is from the mandible. So the bone spicules, so these ones, the ones being pointed out, they appear in various shapes and sizes, but they interconnect. So you see, there are some connections here already. And that's why they form the network. And then osteoblasts at the surface of the newly deposited bone, and osteocyte at the calcified portion of the spicule. So the ones on the side, the cells around beside the spicules are the osteoblasts, while those within, like this, are the osteocytes. So that's just a main differentiation, how to identify them. So if you notice at the very right side of the picture here, it's very highly cellular. So this is actually the early periosteum already. And if you notice in this picture, there is no cartilage because there is no cartilage model. Okay? So this is the intramembranous. A review. You should be experts of this because we had this in the exam also. So epiphysis at the ends, diaphysis in the shaft, and in between them, the metaphysis. Okay, so when we discuss, you'll not get lost which part of the bone we're talking about. This is for the long bone. So endochondral ossification. So at around 12 weeks, age of gestation, the mesenchymal cells proliferate and aggregate at the sites of future bone. Isn't this the same as the intramembranous? Yes, this step is still the same. Under the influence of different fibroblastic growth factors and bone morphogenic proteins, mesenchymal cells express type 2 collagen. Previously, what was the one produced? Type 1. Mesenchymal cells differentiate into chondroblasts. So remember, this is endochondral, so you need a cartilage model. So chondroblasts are being produced by the mesenchymal cells. They differentiate into chondroblasts. And these chondroblasts would be the ones that would produce the cartilage matrix. So if you can see the picture, this is actually in your book. I just place it in the specific area where it's happening. So formation of the hyaline cartilage model. So you can see it's very homogeneous. It's just a cartilage. Then the cartilage model grows by interstitial growth, meaning by length, and appositional growth by width. So we'll be discussing more about this also later with regards to the bone itself also, appositional growth. So length, interstitial, appositional. Always remember, appositional, they go to the side, so it's more of the width. So appositional growth, differentiation of chondrogenic layers of the perichondrium, then new chondrocytes will be formed, and then these chondrocytes would have the additional cartilage matrix also. So it's just growing in width. So remember the previous one, wherein there was just a cartilage. In this part, this is for the long bone, a bone cuff or bony collar around the cartilage model and the diaphyseal portion of the developing bone start is an indication of the start of ossification. So this is the bony collar. You can see there's a yellow just at the diaphyseal portion of the long bone. Actually, the color here, it signifies it's just ossification is starting. So because of this, the cartilage being calcified, there's a decrease already in diffusion of the nutrients, so there's the death of the chondrocytes. There's no flow of the nutrients anymore. So what happens, at this time there's expression of the gene for type 10 collagen and matrix metalloproteases. So I believe this was mentioned in the exam. So what do metalloproteases do? they degrade the cartilage matrix. So there's a confluence with the neighboring lacunae. So what happens if there's confluence? There are separate neighboring lacunae, then they got somehow make one large cavity already. So the cavity becomes vascularized, which is initiated by the VEGF, and blood vessels grow into the thin diaphyseal bony collar. The bony collar, remember, is the one in the yellow. So they start being vascular. The cavity becomes vascularized. Then hematopoietic stem cells gain access to the cavity through the vasculature. So here, they enter here, and that's when we have already the marrow with all the blood cell lineages. So that's how they enter into the cavity. Let's just stop our discussion of the vascularization there, and then we go to the periosteal portion of the bone first before we continue. So there are no chondrocytes from the perichondral cells in the mid-region. Osteoblasts are being produced. So they form the osteogenic layer. So we actually identify that the periosteal bone in terms of its location, and then we say it's intramembranous bone because of its mode of development. So why do we say intramembranous bone when we're talking about endochondral bone? It's because in the long bones, it's only in the long bones wherein there's also intramembranous ossification happening. So it happens in terms of the periosteal activity. That's why I have to mention periosteal bone, because it's very it has a specialized character in which the intramembranous ossification also is occurring aside from the endochondral ossification that we are actually, the whole process is endochondral ossification. But for this portion of the long bone, the periosteum, we have also an ongoing intramembranous bone ossification. The connective tissue around the cartilage, we call perichondrium, remember? So it becomes periosteum. So for the long bone, you don't call it perichondrium when you're already referring to the cartilage, the connective tissue around the, somewhat, we would most likely be pointing around the diaphysis. So if we're pointing to that, do not tell us that it is the perichondrium. It is already bone, it's already calcified, so periosteum. So mesenchymal cells from the periosteum migrate along the penetrating blood vessels. Remember, they already went into the cavity. They differentiate into osteoprogenitor cells in the cavity, and some calcified cartilage remain as irregular spicules. So, like previously we discussed, there were spicules. The endochondral ossification will also involve the spicules, but this time we have calcified cartilage also in the middle, and they remain irregular, but later on they will calcify, they will turn into bone. So opposition of osteoprogenitor cells to the spicules become osteoblasts, and they lay down the matrix. So this is when we already have the osteoid. So by oppositional growth. And this one we would be already calling as primary ossification center. So if you can see here in the middle, remember they went in, vascularized it. So around here, osteoprogenitor cells would stay in the sides or of the spicules, become osteoblasts. You already laid down the bone matrix for the osteoid, and then this already becomes the primary ossification center. So remember that. So this is a mixed spicule during endochondral ossification. If you could notice, the lighter colored ones is the calcified cartilage. Being a cartilage, you will see also that it's lighter colored compared to our bone. And in the bone, you will see already your osteocytes. So that one you can differentiate because this one is cellular. You cannot see any cells. While in the bone, their osteocytes are very prominent. So this is a combination of bone and underlying calcified cartilage. So I think there's an osteocyte. Yeah, there. Osteoblast. So formation. Yeah, I think it's just pointed out. We'll be talking about resorption later. So in the chondral ossification, so after birth, what happens? The cartilage cells at the proximal epiphyseal hypertrophy and degenerate. So if you remember, the epiphyses are in both ends. We just say that this is the proximal, this is the distal portion. So at the proximal side, they would hypertrophy, they would degenerate, and they would calcify. So when that happens, like the one happened in the diaphysis, they become vascularized, blood vessels enter, osteogenic cells form, and they have a new marrow cavity at the epiphyseal area. Remember, it's just the same as the one happened in the diaphysis. So this becomes a secondary ossification center. Later, similar epiphyseal ossification center also forms in the distal part. So usually it starts with the proximal before it also occurs in the distal epiphysis. So the remaining articular cartilage at the ends of the bone remain. So epiphyseal cartilage or growth plate. So you can see there's still a cartilage here remaining despite the high vascularization and formation of already the secondary ossification center. The cartilage is being maintained. So this is the epiphyseal growth plate, or just growth plate. Epiphyseal cartilage is another term. What do we do? That's that. So this is a picture. So if you can see, so this is the marrow with all the trabeculae. This is the hyaline cartilage. If you can remember, cartilage is a vascular, but we have blood vessels because, remember, the vascularization of the epiphyseal portion also happens in chondral ossification. So in contrast to what we usually say that cartilage is a vascular, for this part, because it's already undergoing ossification, there are vascularities there. So blood vessels are present. And then, what else can you see? The growth plate is very prominent. I don't know if you can see it from your seats. You can see that there is a lighter color for this portion compared to the hyaline cartilage itself. So that's your growth plate. And then, if you notice, remember we said once it is already surrounding the bone, we're calling it periosteum, this connective tissue surrounding the bone. But this one is covering the hyaline cartilage, so it is perichondrium. Okay, so if we point here, you know it's the bone. It's periosteum. We're covering here. We're pointing here, the connective tissue here. You know it's covering the hyaline cartilage is for perichondrium. Even if the sample is the bone, okay? So you know that there is the hyaline cartilage there. So for the epiphyseal cartilage zones, we have first the reserve cartilage. So there's no cell proliferation or active matrix production in this area. So reserve lang siya. Zone of proliferation. So what happens? Cartilage cells undergo division and organize into distinct columns, and they become a bit larger and produce collagen. So they become active. And then other cartilage matrix proteins are also being produced at this point. Then they hypertrophy. So the cells become greatly enlarged. Cytoplasm clear up. Would appear cleared up because of the glycogen being removed during the preparation. Then the chondrocytes are metabolically active at this portion. So they secrete type 1 and type 10 collagen. And then because of the VEGF, we have vascular invasion. Remember the picture? We had vascularities in that portion already. Cartilage matrix compressed, forming linear bands and becoming columns. So because the cells are starting to form columns, the cartilage matrix is also appearing as bands. Then next we have the calcified cartilage. So the hypertrophied cells begin to degenerate and calcify. So the proximal chondrocytes undergo apoptosis. Then we have the resorption zone. So calcified cartilage in direct contact with the connective tissue of the marrow cavity. So the calcify sila. And then small vessels and connective tissue invade the region previously occupied by the dying chondrocytes. So the blood vessels, then we have the osteoprogenitor cells, then the calcified cartilage appearing as longitudinal spicules. So just know the difference between the zones, what happens in each zone, and then how does the cells appear, how do the cells appear in each zone. So those are the things that you must remember. So this is just a picture of how the zones look like as an illustration. So if you can see, for the reserve, we mentioned the cells are somewhat flattened, inactive, and a few of them only. Zone of proliferation, they start to enlarge, and they also somewhat form already columns. But in the hypertrophy, they become greatly enlarged, and you could readily appreciate the columns, which are very prominent. And then the calcified cartilage and the matrices are calcified. In resorption, they start to degenerate. You can see the cells here. In actual picture, so this is the whole growth plate. So reserve, proliferative, hypertrophied. There's no exact here on the other side. So this one's the calcified portion. So you can see, flattened, a bit enlarged, somewhat forming. The column's not much appreciated here. It can be seen here though. And then the hypertrophy, and then the calcified. Okay? Then you know that that portion is the marrow. So what happens next? By the second trimester of early adulthood, to early adulthood, epiphyseal growth plate would be responsible for maintaining the growth process. So the child is already growing. Okay? So distinct zonation in the cartilage both ends of the marrow cavity. You can see in the picture. It's very distinct. There's a zonation between both ends of the marrow. So there are delineation, which separates epiphysis and the diaphysis. So epiphysis, diaphysis is in between those two. So you have radial osteoclastic activity, addition of new bone tissue. So primary spongy bone is a result of these two activities. And the organization of the primary spongy bone, and then you accommodate continued growth and physical stressors of the bone. So it's actually a balance between osteoclastic activity and addition of new bone when you are growing. So when you increase in length, what happens here? So there's bone external internal remodeling that happens for the bone to lengthen. So, but for this to happen, and then still preserve your growth plate appearance and amount, you should see that the thickness of the epiphyseal plate remains relatively constant. Whether it is in the shorter bone or the much longer one, more or less they have the same thickness. The amount of new cartilage also should equal the amount of the cartilage that's being resorbed. And then the resorbed cartilage is replaced by spongy bone. This picture is really very nice. If you can see here, there's a dotted line of the original shape of the bone, which is actually mirror image to this one. So you can see the original bone. But because of the lengthening, so there's an addition here. For it to maintain its shape, you can see that there is addition of the bone, but at the same time, there's also resorption here, the blue one, just so that the bone will still maintain its shape despite the lengthening. So it's a balance between the activity of the osteoclast and also the addition of the bone with your osteoclast. So for growth to happen, you have hypertrophy, calcification, resorption, and ossification. So those are the processes involved for growth. But with regards to increase in width, a positional growth occurs between cortical lamina and periosteum. So the marrow cavity enlarges with resorption of the bone on the endosteal surface of cortex bone. Actually, I still showed you the same picture because if you can see in the marrow here, in this portion, with the increase in the length, and then somewhat you would also have to increase your width to correspond to the increase in the length. You can see that for you to add here, you would have to shape also. So you would have some resorption happening in the inner portion. So So remodeling is the preferential bone resorption in some areas and deposition of bone in others. So the whole process is actually bone remodeling. So this is what we call the bone remodeling unit. So you have resorption, at the same time you have bone deposition in some areas. So we're talking about growth of the endochondral bone. So when you already achieve maximal growth, so meaning adulthood already, there's a termination of the proliferation of the new cartilage in the epiphyseal plate. So what happens? The epiphyseal plate, by this time there's already no remaining cartilage. So the epiphyseal closure happens. So the epiphyseal and the epiphyseal marrow cavities become confluent. If you can see here on the distal portion, you cannot anymore see the cartilage. You would already have they already meld together the two cavities, the primary and the secondary ossification centers. So in the epiphyseal line, though, will still persist. You can see here on the proximal portion, there's the epiphyseal line. Even here, there is an epiphyseal line. So it's a vestigial evidence of the site of the epiphyseal plate, and it's composed of bone tissue. So it's not cartilage. Okay? You can ask that. What is the epiphyseal line composed of? And then this is actually the whole process that we've been talking about for endochondral ossification in the long bone. So I just separated the pictures while we discuss about what was happening in each one of them. So let's talk about the immersion system. So this is already for the internal remodeling. So osteons develop in pre-existing compact bone. So compact bone, actually there are several forms. So from fetal spongy bones, spicules, they may form compact bones, or direct deposition onto the adult compact bone. So this is when we have the circumferential lamellae as a product. Then older compact bone also, the older compact bone would comprise of osteons and then added interstitial lamellae. So osteoclast, for you to have immersion system, you remember that there is a canal in the middle. So osteoclast would bore a tunnel, so they would result to a resorption cavity, where blood vessels and surrounding connective tissue would travel through the cavity, and new bone deposition on the tunnel walls. So remember the bone remodeling unit? So osteoclast resorption equals osteoclast synthesis. So what happens in the bone remodeling unit? First, we have the cutting cone or the resorption canal. So what happens? This is the one first, advancing. Silang advanced party. So the advancing osteoclast, then they're closely followed by the advancing capillary loop and pericytes. And then there's increased dividing cells giving rise to the other cells, the osteoblasts, additional pericytes, and endothelial cells. So this is the first part of the canal formation. So the closing cone is the one that the end part. So when the osteoblasts begin to fill the canal by deposition of organic matrix on its walls, so they would form successive lamellae. The bone matrix becomes mineralized from the periphery inward, not from the middle going out. So from outside, they would become bone matrix become mineralized. So you would result with a narrower diameter compared to the initial canal that you formed by the activity of the osteoclast. And then you would have progressive secondary mineralization. So this is a picture. So this is what I meant with the cutting cone. You would have larger lumen. Then you can see here, the osteoclasts are the ones very active. So they would bore a hole. And then followed by the osteoblasts and other cells and even the connective tissue. And followed by the closing cone. So here you can see the successive lamellae being formed already from outside going inward. So this is you can see here, you have already several concentric rings around your canal. So what are the nutritional factors in bone formation? So these are the ones that I just want you to remember. So calcium for bone matrix calcification. So it has a role in reservoir of calcium. Our bones are actually calcium reservoirs. So vitamin D, A, and C. So just remember the role of these vitamins in bone formation.
Vitamin D and
And what
C.
happens if there is a deficiency or overproduction or presence of high levels of vitamin A. So those are the conditions that happens. In vitamin C, there's a decrease in vitamin C that happens curvy. So know the signs and symptoms that will differentiate each and every one of them. And then vitamin A, if there's so many, fragility and long bone fractures, if it is decreased, there's a suppression of the growth. The rickets or osteomalacia when you have deficiency of these two nutritional factors. So rickets in children, because they're still growing when the epiphyseal plate is already closed, is osteomalacia. I think in your learning objective, it was mentioned that we should differentiate also mature and immature bone. So how do we differentiate mature and immature bones? Of course, mature, so you usually see it in the adult. And then the immature, you will see it in the fetal bone. So, but do not mistake it that you would not find also immature bone in adults, because sometimes you do. Where do you find it? In the alveolar sockets of the oral cavity. So that's why you can still make corrections when you put braces under dental apparatus. So what is the difference between the mature and immature? So the immature cells, if you can see from the picture, first the immature cells are, the immature bone forms more rapidly than the mature one. Of course, it's still immature. Then if you can see, remember the concentric rings? It's not present in our immature bone, so they are non-laminate. Non-laminate bones. So non-lamellar, so they are also called bundle or woven bones. So there's no organized laminated appearance. There are also more cells per unit area. You can see there are more cells here. Compared here, they're more sparsely seen all throughout. And then the cells are also randomly arranged compared to the mature bone, wherein they are actually in parallel to their long axis, meaning how they are oriented, is parallel to the lamellae. So you can see here, the lamellae is going like that. So the cells, the long axis of the cells are like that. While the immature cells, the cells of the immature bone are in disarray. There's no specific orientation. Then the matrix also, there's also more ground substance in the matrix of the immature bone, causing it to stain intensely in hematoxylin. And then the mature bone would stain more intensely with eosine. So just know that difference also. Then of course, since it's immature, not heavily mineralized when initially formed. The mature one would even undergo secondary mineralization, as we mentioned earlier. So actual pictures between the mature and immature, you can appreciate the lamellae. There's no specific organization. There are more cells, less cells. You can see there are less cells compared to this, where there's several per unit area. Just touch on a little bit on bone repair. So when there is fracture, there's actually tissue destruction and some hemorrhage, since the bone is very vascularized. So neutrophils are the first cells to arrive in the area, site of fracture, followed up closely by the macrophages, which would be responsible for the cleaning up at the site of the injury. So fibroblasts and capillaries proliferate into the site. Then granulation tissue is formed. They're usually comprised of the loose connective tissue. Then there's increase in the density of the granulation tissue by the action of the fibroblasts and cartilage formation with the action of the periosteal cells. So what happens from the loose, they would become dense connective tissue, and then with the addition of the new cartilage cover bone fracture at the fracture site, you would form soft callus, which is actually the one responsible for stabilizing and binding together the fractured ends. If you have a fracture, the two ends of the fractured area.
It's not specific.
So osteoprogenitor cells of the periosteum divide and differentiate into osteoblasts. Osteoblasts deposit new bone on the outer surface, progressing inward. So a bony sheath over the fibrocartilaginous callus. So it just covers the callus. And then osteogenic buds form new bone invade into the callus and deposit new bone within the callus. So from the cartilaginous, fibrocartilaginous callus, it becomes the bony. It's bony in structure. Medullary bone growth, so industrial proliferation differentiation in the marrow, and then it would also occur in both simultaneously from both ends of the fracture towards the center. So they will just meet up in the middle. So with the union of the fractured bones by the osteoblast, you would form the spongy bone. So this is the first one that is being formed with the union of both sides. So gradual replacement to become a compact bone. And then the callus is removed by osteoclastic activity, gradual remodeling, just so that it will shape up to the original shape. And then this usually occurs, the duration is 6 to 12 weeks, although it may be longer in some areas depending on the severity of the fracture and the location of the fracture. So we just mentioned here bone setting. So what do you do when you do bone setting? You approximate normal structure of the fractured area. So how do you do this? By internal fixation and external fixation. So these are the samples of how you do both. You're familiar with cast, and then if you need to do internal fixation, you do pin screws and grease. So this is a picture of it. So this is a longitudinal view, the one on the left. Longitudinal view of a 3-week-old fracture. So there are two boxes, if you can see. One the top and one in the lower portion. So the one on the lower portion, old bone will be removed by the osteoblast. So this is the old bone. So this part, you can see there's an old bone. This is the cartilage portion. So this is just a closer view. So the old bone would be removed by the action of the osteoblast. They would calcify and new bone spindles would form. So that's what happens in that portion. While on the upper portion, here, you can see in contrast to this, you already have the trabeculase. So you have the spicules interconnecting, so you already have this trabeculae there. So let's just say, so you can see that from here, there's still a separation between the old bone and the cartilage, and then here you already have the trabeculae forming. So you can see that it's actively repairing itself. So basically that's just the main topic. Just know what happens one after the other. Why does it have to undergo this? What do you call terminologies? Because some of them would refer to the same thing, but they're actually the same. They're referring to one structure, they're referring to one process. So don't confuse them. And then what else do you have to remember about ossification? I think bone repair, clinical correlation, especially with fractures, with growth, and then the nutrient factors. Remember those things. Okay, so are you ready to do our review before we? Yes. Okay. It's just a short. Need the music? Just don't be too loud, kasi people might be wondering why we're playing.
Even yung number 50, which one will not be?
We're supposed to have it.
She's not.
With this one.
Nobody mentioned this to Dr. Naharo, please, because this is a surprise.
Oh, because yung A hurler something. Yung A hurler.
Yung A hunter. Yung A hurler.
B hunter. And C hurler shin.
Ay, sorry to na.